All right, today we're diving into a project called AMR Chain. And look, this isn't just another new blockchain. It's a really bold idea that basically asks if the entire crypto world has been building on a shaky foundation from the very beginning. So let's get into it. You know, most projects kick off by asking how they can grab a slice of the market. But the folks behind AMR Chain, they started somewhere totally different. They asked a much deeper question. Why is the blockchain universe so fragmented to begin with? This isn't about who has the better tech or more users. They see it as a fundamental design flaw that's created all these walled gardens we see today.
And just think about it for a second. The EVM world, Ethereum and all its cousins, it's like its own massive continent. Then you have Solana, this super fast, powerful parallel universe, but it's totally cut off. Even Polkadot, which was literally built for interoperability, gives you organization but not really true deep unification. And of course, Bitcoin is just playing a completely different game with its own logic. The argument here is that things like bridges, they're just logistical band-aids. They move your stuff around, sure, but they don't fix the core problem, that these chains don't speak the same language at an architectural level.
Okay, so to really understand their solution, here's the roadmap we're going to follow. First up, we'll dig into their core philosophy, this post-chain thesis. Then we'll look at the technical heart of it all, what they call the universal translator. After that, we'll check out the unique languages they've created for building things, see how the market itself is designed to be an engine for the whole system, and we'll wrap up with the one big question this whole project makes you ask.
So let's start with a big idea, the main thesis. AMR Chain is built around something called a post-chain architecture. And the key thing to get here is that this isn't about just getting different chains to talk to each other. It's way more ambitious. It's about building a single, unified system that actually understands all of them from the ground up. So what's the secret sauce here? Well, the whole thesis is that chains aren't really different because of their tokens or NFTs. No, the real difference is their execution model. The core logic, the very DNA of how they process transactions and run code. A post-chain architecture tries to unify everything at that incredibly deep foundational level. The system is really built on two main pillars. The best way to think about it is with a body and brain analogy. First, you've got AMR Chain, which is the body. It's a sovereign layer one, it has its own economy, its own assets, it's the stable, solid foundation for everything. And then you have Sirius AMR, which is the brain. Its whole job is to be the central hub that unifies all those different execution models, EVM, Solana, you name it, into one single coherent system. Okay, so that brings us to what is, for me, the coolest part, the tech. How in the world you actually unify different chains without using the bridges and wrappers we're all used to? Well, the answer is surprisingly elegant. At the very heart of this is something called Core Intermediate Representation, or just Core IR. So instead of trying to run a separate virtual machine for Ethereum and another one for Solana and so on, this system does something genius. It takes the code from any chain and translates it into one single universal language before it ever gets executed. If you're a developer, the LLVN comparison is perfect. It's a tool that lets different programming languages get compiled into one common format a machine can run. This is the exact same idea, but for blockchains. So here's a quick look at how that lifting process actually works. First, you take smart contract code from any chain, Solidity, Rust, whatever. Then, a special tool called a lifter, like an EVM lifter for Ethereum code, does this deep analysis to figure out what the code is actually trying to do. Then, it translates that meaning into the unified Core IR. And finally, that Core IR code is run on one single unified virtual machine. It's an incredibly clean way to solve the problem. And this is the massive payoff. Because everything is translated into one language and runs on one machine, you get what's called a global unified state. That means you can forget about the EVM having its own state and Solana having another. Here, all the data for every account lives in the exact same ledger. And what that means is an Ethereum smart contract could just natively read the balance of a Solana account. No bridge, no wrapping, nothing. Because in this system, they effectively are on the same chain. Okay, so the architecture is designed to unify everything underneath. But how do you actually build on top of it? Well, the project introduces two brand new languages, and they each have a very specific job. One is for defining what you want to create, and the other is for defining how you interact with it. These two languages are Davin and Vexa. Think of Davin as the language of intent. Its job is to understand what you want to exist, and then it generates all the code for you. Orvexa, on the other hand, is the application language. That's what you'd use to build the UIs, the bots, the front ends. It defines how something lives and how users interact with it.
This quote really nails what makes Davin so different. It's an intent language, so a developer can just describe what they want, like, say, an ERC20 token that has a 2% tax on every transfer. Davin understands that intent, generates the best possible code, and can even figure out the best chain to deploy it on automatically. It completely changes the game from low-level engineering to high-level design.
So we've got the unifying architecture and the languages to build with it. But what? What powers it all? What keeps the lights on? Well, that brings us to the final, crucial piece of this puzzle, a totally unique economic engine that's designed to be the beating heart of the whole ecosystem. It's called SIX. And you need to know, right off the bat, this is not your typical crypto exchange. It's not a CEX, it's not a DEX. The source material calls it a hybrid market engine. Its goal isn't just to be a place for people to trade tokens. It's a foundational layer that's woven directly into the chain's value and stability. So how is SIX engineered to actually create value? Well, for one, it uses a real traditional order book for efficient trading. But here's the really clever part. There's a positive feedback loop. Every single trade actually contributes to the value of the system's own reserve assets, which are called digital metals. This means the more people use the market, the stronger its own foundation becomes. It even has its own stable asset, NVR, that's backed by these internal reserves, not by external fiat dollars. It creates stability from within. The system itself is basically the main market maker, and its goal is stability, not just volatility. Okay, so we have looked at the post-chain thesis, the universal translator, the languages, the market engine, the whole shebang. So let's just pull it all together and ask the really big question. What's the ultimate takeaway from an architecture like this? And here it is. This is the core argument of the whole project. AMR Chain doesn't see itself as another Ethereum killer. Its fundamental belief is that the next giant leap in crypto won't be another standalone blockchain fighting for users. Instead, it'll be an execution unifier, a system designed not to replace Ethereum or Solana, but to absorb and unify them into something much, much bigger. And that brings us to the final, really provocative thought from the source material. If a system like this truly exists, one that can understand any code, unify all accounts into a single state, and provide its own stable economic foundation, then the question becomes incredibly loud and clear. Why would anyone ever need to launch their own separate network again? It's a huge question and one that could really redefine the entire blockchain landscape as we know it.